Hey everyone, this is going to be a follow-up video to the walk-around that we did on Michael's car. I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk to all of you about purchasing a used Factory 5 and kind of what to look for. You can tell a lot from the build quality of a Factory 5 or any replica kit car, whatever you want to, however you want to refer to them as. Basically, by just doing a little bit of investigation when you look at the car, the more you know about the assembly process, the better. So if you're not sure about how these cars go together or how they're built, some of your best resources are going to be those within the community that build these cars. Whether you have a friend that built one, whether you have access to one of the pro builders. Factory 5 has what they refer to as their preferred builders. And one call to Factory 5 or an email sent to them and the area you live in, and they will tell you who closest to you is someone that they would recommend to have a Factory 5 built for you. Even if you are in the process of thinking about buying a used Factory 5, or whether you are having one built, those guys are great resources because they've seen enough of these cars to know how they go together and what are the cars that you should pursue, what are the cars that you should just walk away from, or in some cases, those cars that you can purchase at a reduced price because of the condition of them, and then either do the rebuilding or maintenance or whatever the process would be depending on the condition of the car yourself, or whether you're going to have a pro builder such as myself or someone else throughout the country and up in Canada for that matter. So when I referred to the build quality, one of the best things you can do is to take a peek under the hood of the car, under the rear end of the car, and under the dash, provided the under portion of the dash is accessible and you take a peek under there. Those three things will usually give you a pretty good idea of the build quality. Not necessarily of the maintenance. We'll get to maintenance issues in a few minutes, but just of the build quality in general. The engine's usually the engine compartment anyways, you usually get a good indicator of how the build was put together. In this case, on Michael's car, which is a Mark III, it's an early Mark III. You can look, and we did when we first got the car here, under the hood, and there are some things that are just glaringly wrong with the car. Things were done haphazardly, and with those simple indicators of how the car was put together will give you a really good idea of how the rest of the car was put together. I'm going to walk around to the other side of the car and we will look at the first thing I saw when this car came in. The car is up on the lift right now. It's kind of inconvenient, but it's kind of warm today. I don't feel like pushing Slytherin outside and taking the cover off, so we're just going to kind of go with it the way we've got it right now, and if I have to climb up on a step stool or ladder, I will. If you look at the intake, they reutilized a lot of the stock 2003 Mustang intake tubing, which is fine. They could have kept it whole and rerouted it, or they could have shortened it like they did. The point here is the way they shortened it, they just they cut it, and then they just kind of pop riveted and safety wired it together, and it looks like it was poorly done. And with that, you can tell immediately that if something that's that glaring and in your face when you open the hood of the car is done with this level of care, that most likely the rest of the car was built in the same manner. Wire loom, this split loom, like here, it goes a long way in cleaning stuff up in the engine compartment and throughout the car, sometimes even behind the dash, although I tend not to use this behind the dash because it makes troubleshooting that much harder. But it also hides a lot. And when you don't have access to stuff like this because they've run, this split loom underneath the hood, lucky for us, they didn't run this everywhere on the underside of the hood. Some of it is just bare wire running from one point to another, and so that was another indication that at the build quality here. But for that stuff that's contained in this, generally speaking, these poor done builds are not going to run a split loom to hide stuff when it is under or behind the dash. And so you'll notice, we've already started tearing this car apart, so stuff like this is hanging out. This actually had split loom on it. This went to the tach driver for the tachometer. But here's a really good indication. That's a household wire nut, okay? That's not the only one that's in this car. I can walk around to the other side of the car, and there's just a collection of these, and I've pulled off probably in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 others that had these. They're everywhere. You can see here in the bottom of the car, they're everywhere. They were everywhere. They're still on the stock harness. They're everywhere. So when this car first came into the shop, I looked underneath the dash and I saw all these wire nuts. And because I'm in the electrical trade, I spotted those immediately. And those are only supposed to be used in, residential and commercial buildings, not in cars. Other things like this right here, these wires were just kind of tucked up and taped away. There's a number of wires just cut in different spots. And these were all just loose behind the dash. Here's the ones I was looking for. These right here. These were all just like this behind the dash. God only knows where they go. And if I had the stock Ford EVTM, I could follow those and find out what they were for. Maybe they're not active, but maybe they are. So with that level of attention to detail when this car was built, simply looking underneath the dash and underneath the hood, in this case, we've pulled most of the stuff out of the back of the car, so you can't really see it. But there was what I refer to as a wire salad, sitting in this area of the trunk with more wire nuts and more splices that weren't done properly. And granted, the fuel tank is sealed at this part of the car, but still, you don't want a loose wire, grounding out on the top of the tank. That's bad. I pointed this out in the walk-around video of Mike's car here, and here at the clutch pedal, the top of this clutch pedal has a little nub on it, and it's wearing into the wires. There's a divot in the bottom of this bunch of wires where this point has worn in to that part of the harness. And it was just a matter of time before something inside there shorted out. We've even got, wire nuts, what is this? 3-4 inches from, the fuse block. What? It's like you could have soldered and heat shrunk this, and the wire nuts aren't even tight. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you have the opportunity to speak with or have an inspection done on a vehicle that you're looking to buy, generally, you know, we pro builders will just charge you by the hour. So you pay for our travel to go and look at the vehicle, and then whatever time we're there, and then whatever time it takes us to give you some type of report on the car, whether that's verbal or whether it's, you know, in writing or in an email or a text or whatever. And so for a few $100s, you can make a educated decision on whether or not this car is something that you want to pursue or something you want to walk away from. Let's go over into some maintenance issues now. You know, a lot of people will pay attention to horsepower items. You know, I'm gonna get these new hotter, cooler coil packs for my spark plugs because they're going to give me more performance, or I'm going to change them to these super duper 3 something or other spark plugs to get me, you know, 7 more horsepower. They will think about brakes because, you know, obviously brakes are important, but they'll glaze right over the important stuff. The suspensions on these cars, because the chassis are just so rigid, the suspension on these cars take a beating. And since they don't have rubber bushings, they have, you know, like in this case, these control arms are like a Delron bushing. If these don't see proper maintenance, they're going to fail. They're going to seize. They're going to, you know, one of these, if they seize, is going to break the shaft right back here. And then you're going to have an issue controlling the car to a safe stop. The lower control arms need to be greased periodically. I like to do them probably either once a year or every second oil change, depending on how often you're changing your oil. The coilovers in this case are a maintenance issue simply because these Bilstein coilovers have a particular failure rating, and I haven't checked these to see what the diameter of the shafts are on these, but if they are the smaller shafts, then the fix for these is to send them in to Bilstein and have the coilovers serviced, and they will make the shafts a larger diameter. So that's a maintenance issue as well. So don't just think about your brakes and performance types of things on your on these cars when you look at them. You know, see if there has been maintenance done. And actually, in this case, the more greasy the upper control arms and the lower control arms are, the more the indication that, you know, they've been serviced. In this case, they've probably been serviced at a mechanic's because it doesn't look like they cared too much to wipe up the grease that kind of was pushed out of the fittings when it was greased. But if you're buying from someone who has maintained the car on their own, you know, ask them how often they've serviced the suspension parts, and, you know, when's the last time the brakes were checked, when's the last time that the fuel filter was changed. I can tell from this car that it most likely has the fuel filter from the donor in it. It doesn't look like it's ever been changed. And so with unknown mileage, because I'm not sure what the exact mileage of the donor was, and because the speedometer and the odometer didn't work in this car when it came into the shop, I have no idea how many miles were put on it since the car was put together. But those are things, you know, if you're buying from someone and they have records of, you know, when they serviced it, or they can tell you, hey, every year I went through and I, you know, because I didn't put a whole lot of miles on it, I would change the oil and flush the coolant and, you know, check the brakes and all that stuff. That is all good stuff that you can ask the person who's selling the car before you buy it. Again, if you're looking for advice on a particular vehicle and you have one of the pro builders in your area, reach out, because those guys are going to be a great resource. They may even know the car, because a lot of us are involved in the community and we may have seen the car. We may have known the previous owner. All those types of things can aid you when you go to purchase your car. So I think that's gonna wrap up this episode today. I just hate to see these cars languish unbuilt. There are a lot of these kits that get started and then never get finished. They become sentimental pieces for the original owners, and they don't want to sell them because they have high hopes of one day finishing them. And I think that to me is sad, because a lot of those cars never get built. Those are the ones that you see on eBay for exorbitant amounts of money, sitting in a garage somewhere rusting, and then the other ones are the cars that just go from owner to owner to owner, because each subsequent person that buys the car finds out all of the things that were done poorly on the car, and rather than addressing them or fixing them and getting the car to a nice, good, reliable driver type vehicle, just decide it's less work and less expensive just to sell it. So we've had quite a few of those that have come through the shop, and all of those have been brought back, put on the road, and get lots of miles put on them once they're good, reliable cars. So there are a lot of bargains out there to be found. I just don't want, and I hate to see people pay too much money for a vehicle that was poorly built, and then it just gets passed on to the next owner. So if any of you guys can take some of what I've given you and make a more educated decision on buying one of these cars, great. The last thing I wanted to discuss is the donor car versus the complete car, or however you want to refer to it. There are thousands of these factory 5 cars that were built using donor parts. Now, donor parts is a very subjective term. Even a brand new part can be referred to as a donor part. So for instance, if you decide that you want to do power brakes on one of these, and you go source a brake booster from the local auto parts store, it may be a new one, it may be a rebuilt Mustang booster. So is that a donor part? Technically it is. There are many cars out there that I've seen that have used nothing but, quote unquote, new or complete build parts that are poorly assembled as well. So the donor car versus new parts car, I don't think there's as much difference in the end build quality of a car, more than the actual builder and the quality that the builder put into the car as he was putting it together. I think those are the things that are paramount. When we're done with this car, it will still be considered a donor build because it's got a donor engine in it. It's going to have a, the donor transmission. Even though we are pulling this transmission, we're going to go through it and change synchros and bring it back to new. It's going to get a rebuilt donor rear end in it. But it's going to have, a brand new Holley fuel injection system in it. It's going to have a brand new chassis harness in it. In this case, we're replacing a lot of little things around the car too. Tail lights, headlights, that kind of stuff. So essentially, it's going to be a brand new car when we're done with it. So don't get caught up too much on the donor car versus the complete kit build. Because I think in the end, if the build quality of the car is done and executed well, then the car is still a, you know, it's still going to be a good car regardless of what parts may have been used on it, donor versus you know, quote unquote new. You can do a donor build and go through the engine and rebuild it, and go through the transmission and rebuild it, and go through the rear end and rebuild it. Now, is it new? It's hard to say. So there are lots and lots of quality built cars out there, both donor and complete kit type cars. And if you find one that you like and it fits everything you need and checks all the boxes, and you can confirm that it was a quality build from the very beginning, then, you know, and it's something you want, then, you know, it's probably the car for you. But if you walk up to the car and immediately start asking questions, well, how come this is put together with baling wire, and how come there's this duct tape over here, and stuff like that, it may be just time to walk away from that car. Or if you have the knowledge and the expertise to rebuild the car, then it'll give you a little bit of leverage as far as getting the price of the vehicle down to something where you can buy it at a good price and then rebuild it and still end up with a good car. So anyways, I think that's going to be it for today, guys. As I walked around this car, I just thought this was going to be a really good opportunity to tell everybody out there, you know, some of the pitfalls of not having an inspection done on one of these vehicles before you buy it, and kind of buying it blind. Because I know, you know, quite a few builders have paid really good money for some of these vehicles that are not in, you know, turnkey condition, that need a lot of work. And it's frustrating, you know, you work really hard for your money, and then you buy something that you think you're going to be able to enjoy, and then all of a sudden now you're pouring money into it because it's not what you thought that you bought. So anyways, I hope you all enjoy the video, and look forward to seeing you again, and have a good day.